The machine gun nest erupts with fire. October 3rd, 1942. Henderson Field, Guadalcanal. Japanese Zero fighters scream overhead at 200 feet, their wing cannons spitting death across the muddy airstrip below. Construction workers scatter. Bulldozers abandoned mid-push. Dump trucks idling beside half-finished runway sections. Seaman, second class, Lawrence C. Bucky Meyer drops his hammer. He's 22 years old, a truck driver from Pennsylvania. No combat training beyond 6 weeks of rifle drills back at boot camp. His hands are calloused from hauling concrete bags and driving supply trucks through tropical mud, not from pulling triggers. The Zero banks hard, lining up for another strafing run. Meyer sprints toward a Marine machine gun pit 30 yards away. The gunner lies slumped over his weapon, blood pooling in the coral sand. Meyer doesn't think. He vaults into the pit, grabs the .50 caliber Browning, swings the barrel skyward. His fingers find the butterfly trigger. The gun bucks against his shoulder. Brass casings rain down around his boots. The Zero erupts in flames, cartwheels into the jungle tree line. Black smoke spirals into the tropical sky. Meyer doesn't know it yet, but he's just become the first decorated Seabee hero of World War II. 10 days later, Chief Machinist Mate Henry L. Thompson will become the first Seabee killed in action when Japanese battleships Haruna and Congo unleash 1,400 shells on Henderson Field during the night of October 13th. The Naval Construction Battalion, the Seabees, will suffer over 300 killed in combat before war's end. Another 500 dead from accidents building under fire. But here's what nobody expected. These construction workers, electricians, carpenters, heavy equipment operators averaging 37 years old, will pick up rifles alongside Marines. They'll defend perimeters, man machine guns, hold defensive lines against 1,000-man Japanese assault forces, all while keeping Henderson Field operational under near-constant bombardment. What the Imperial Japanese Navy didn't know on September 1st, 1942, when 387 men of the 6th Naval Construction Battalion landed on Guadalcanal, was that these soft targets would prove the most adaptable combat construction force in military history. A unit that shouldn't have existed. Led by men the Navy initially refused to give command authority, armed with a radical concept that military brass called completely impractical. By war's end, 258 found 872 Seabees will build over 400 advance bases across 2 theaters. They'll construct housing for 1.5 million servicemen. They'll do it under fire. And they'll fight when necessary. But it almost never happened. December 7th, 1941. Pearl Harbor smolders. Admiral Chester Nimitz surveys the damage. 8 battleships destroyed or damaged. The Pacific Fleet crippled. But Nimitz recognizes something the Japanese missed. They didn't destroy the fuel tanks. They didn't demolish the repair facilities. They didn't crater the airfields. Base infrastructure wins wars. And America's base construction strategy is failing catastrophically. The problem? Civilian contractors. In early 1942, the Navy relies on private construction firms to build advanced bases. These companies operate under peacetime civilian law. Their workers carry no weapons. They have no military protection status under the Geneva Convention. When Japanese forces attack Wake Island on December 23, 1941, civilian construction workers become prisoners of war. Many are executed. Others die in brutal POW camps. The Navy issues a desperate call for civilian workers to fortify Midway Atoll and other Pacific outposts. Experienced tradesmen refuse. The pay is good, but the odds of survival are terrible. Contractors can simply walk away when enemy forces approach. They have no military obligation to stay. And they do walk away. Lieutenant Commander Ben Moriel, chief of the Navy's Bureau of Yards and Docks, sees the strategic disaster unfolding. America needs to island hop across the Pacific, Every contested island needs an airfield operational within days. Fuel depots, ammunition bunkers, hospital facilities, roads through jungle terrain, all built while under enemy fire. Civilian contractors can't, won't do it. Moriel proposes a radical solution: militarize the construction force. Create naval construction battalions of skilled tradesmen enlisted as sailors. Give them military rank. Train them to fight. Make them part of the invasion force. The concept seems simple. The bureaucratic opposition is fierce. The War Department objects. The Army Corps of Engineers already handles military construction, they argue. The Navy doesn't need its own builders. Creating an entirely new branch wastes resources during wartime mobilization. Military planners balk at the age requirements. Moriel wants to recruit experienced tradesmen, men in their 30s and 40s with decades of civilian construction experience. The Navy's standard age limit is 31. These older men won't survive boot camp, commanders insist. They're too old for combat conditions. The Civil Engineer Corps faces its own internal rebellion. Navy regulations stipulate that only line officers, graduates of Annapolis trained for combat command, can exercise military authority over armed sailors. Civil Engineer Corps officers are technical specialists. They've never commanded combat troops. They're engineers, not warriors. The Bureau of Navigation delivers the final blow. Construction workers with guns? That's not how military operations function. This is completely impractical. But Rear Admiral Moriel has a powerful ally. Admiral Ernest King, Commander-in-Chief of the U.S. Fleet, understands logistics. King knows the Pacific campaign will be won or lost based on airfield construction speed. He's watched Wake Island fall because civilian contractors couldn't defend what they built. On December 28, 1941, just 3 weeks after Pearl Harbor, Moriel submits his formal request to establish naval construction battalions. The request sits on desks. Weeks pass. The war accelerates. The Battle of Midway approaches. America desperately needs Midway's airfields operational and defended. Civilian contractors are still building them, unarmed and vulnerable. On January 5, 1942, Admiral King overrides all objections. He grants Moriel authorization to create the Naval Construction Battalions. The age limit is raised to 50. Civil Engineer Corps officers will command. These sailors will be trained in both construction and combat. Moriel coins the unit's motto himself: Construimus, batuimus. We build, we fight. Military traditionalists are furious. The concept violates every principle of specialized military training. Combat troops fight. Engineers build. You don't mix the two. The first recruits report to boot camp in March 1942. The 6th Naval Construction Battalion forms on June 24th. By August, they're shipping out to the South Pacific. Their first test, an island called Guadalcanal, where the Marines have just captured an unfinished Japanese airfield. The field must be operational immediately, and the Japanese want it back. Lieutenant Commander Joseph Paul Blunden stares at the muddy coral nightmare the Marines are calling Henderson Field. August 20th, 1942. He's just flown into Guadalcanal on a PBY Catalina to survey the situation. What he sees should take 6 months to build. The Marines need it operational in 2 weeks. Blunden is 44 years old. His credentials for commanding a combat construction battalion? He was a civilian construction contractor in West Virginia. No Annapolis pedigree. No naval combat experience. He enlisted in the Army during World War I, served briefly, then spent 2 decades building roads and bridges in Appalachia. When the Navy started recruiting for the construction battalions, Blunden saw an opportunity to serve. The Navy saw a skilled builder who understood heavy equipment and could read terrain. They made him a lieutenant commander, gave him command of the 6th Naval Construction Battalion, told him to figure it out. Now Blunden surveys Henderson Field and sees the impossible task ahead. The Japanese had started this airstrip using slave labor, picks, shovels, baskets, and 1,200 Korean and Japanese workers moving dirt by hand. The Marines captured it half finished. The runway is 2,600 feet of mud, coral, and holes. It needs to be 3,600 feet minimum for fighters, 5,000 feet for bombers. It needs drainage, parking aprons, fuel storage, revetments to protect aircraft from shelling, and it needs to be done while the Japanese Navy shells them from offshore, while Japanese bombers attack daily, while ground forces in the jungle prepare counter-assaults to retake the field. Blunden flies back to Espiritu Santo, where his battalion waits. He addresses his 387 men. They're electricians, plumbers, heavy equipment operators, carpenters, mechanics. Their average age is 37. Most have families back home. They joined to build, not fight. Here's the situation, Blunden tells them. We're landing on Guadalcanal September 1st. The Marines took an airfield. It's not finished. The Japanese want it back. We're going to complete it while they try to kill us. We're going to work 12-hour shifts. We're going to work under air raids. We're going to work through naval bombardments. And when the Japanese attack our perimeter, we're picking up rifles and defending our work. The men stare back. Some are World War I veterans. Most have never heard gunfire. They signed up for construction duty. Dangerous construction duty, sure, but this sounds like frontline combat. Blunden continues. The Marines are calling this place Cactus. The Japanese are calling it Guadalcanal. I'm calling it the most important airfield in the Pacific. If Henderson Field operates, American planes control these waters. If it fails, the Marines get cut off and die. Simple as that. He pauses. We're not combat engineers. We're not infantry. We're construction workers who happen to be sailors. But we're going to do this job. And we're going to do it under conditions no civilian contractor would ever accept. On September 1st, 1942, the 6th Naval Construction Battalion lands on Guadalcanal. They bring 2 bulldozers, some hand tools. No illusions about the hell waiting for them. The Seabees' secret weapon isn't a weapon at all. It's midnight requisitioning, creative procurement, what they'll later call moonlight requisitioning, what everyone else calls theft. On Guadalcanal, the official supply system is failing. Ships deliver crates to the beach, but nobody knows what's inside until they're opened. Necessary equipment gets shipped to the wrong island. Forms require 5 signatures to requisition a wrench. The bureaucracy is designed for peacetime. War moves faster. Blunden gathers his chiefs. We need Marston mat, he tells them. Marston mat, steel planking that interlocks to create instant runways over mud. Each section is 10 feet long, 15 inches wide, 3 inches deep. They need thousands of sections to make Henderson Field operational during the rainy season. The supply officer checks his manifests. We're not authorized for Marston mat. That's allocated to... I don't care about allocation, Blunden interrupts. Find it. That night, Seabees discover 3 pallets of Marston mat sitting on the beach. The labels say it's destined for a Navy base in New Caledonia. By dawn, the mat is laid across Henderson Field's muddiest sections. Fighter planes that would have been grounded in the mud are taking off to intercept Japanese bombers. The Marines learn quickly. If you need something built, ask the Seabees. If you need something found, definitely ask the Seabees. The Japanese learn something else. These construction workers won't run. September 12, 1942. The Battle of Edson's Ridge, Bloody Ridge, erupts just south of the airfield perimeter. 1,000 Japanese troops assault Marine defensive positions, trying to break through and overrun Henderson Field. The fighting is desperate. Hand-to-hand combat. The Marines hold, but barely. The Seabees hear the battle from their work sites. Some drop their tools and grab rifles. They're not officially part of the defensive perimeter. They're construction workers. But when Marine positions waver, Seabees move forward to fill gaps. Commander Blunden doesn't order them to fight. He doesn't have to. The men understand. If the perimeter breaks, the airfield falls. If the airfield falls, everyone dies. They fight. October 3rd, 1942. Bucky Meyer jumps into that machine gun pit and shoots down a Zero. He's driving a supply truck an hour later. Seabees are repairing bomb craters on the runway while the smoke from crashed Japanese planes still rises from the jungle. This becomes the pattern. Work until you're attacked. Fight until the attack is repulsed. Go back to work. Marine General Alexander Vandegrift, commanding officer on Guadalcanal, watches the Seabees work through an air raid. Bombs are falling. The Seabees scatter to foxholes, wait for the explosions to stop, then immediately return to their bulldozers and start filling the craters. Fighters are landing and taking off within 30 minutes. Vandegrift sends a message to Naval Command. These men are invaluable. Whatever construction the Marines have needed, the Seabees have provided, and they defend their work with weapons when necessary. Back in Washington, the skeptics receive Vandegrift's report. The impossible concept is working. Construction workers are fighting, and they're keeping Henderson Field operational against overwhelming odds. The room erupts with questions. How is this sustainable? How do you train men to switch between welding and weapons? What happens when casualties mount? Admiral King has one answer. Send more Seabees. October 13th, 1942. 11:30 p.m. Henderson Field. The Seabees are working night shifts, trying to finish runway repairs before dawn. Japanese bombers have hit the field twice today. Craters need filling. Damaged aircraft need moving. Fuel lines need repair. Then the horizon lights up. 2 Japanese battleships, Haruna and Kongo, are offshore. Each displaces over 30,000 tons. Each carries 8 14-inch guns. They're about to deliver the heaviest naval bombardment of the war thus far. The first salvo screams overhead. Shells the size of oil drums crater the runway, explode among parked aircraft, detonate in supply dumps. The Seabees dive for their foxholes and slit trenches. For 90 minutes, the bombardment continues. 1,400 shells. The airfield becomes an inferno. Fuel. Dumps explode. Ammunition cooks off in chain reactions. Chief Machinist Mate Henry L. Thompson, 42 years old from Rhode Island, doesn't make it to cover. A 14-inch shell explodes 30 feet from his position. He becomes the first Seabee killed in combat action. Dawn reveals the devastation. 42 aircraft destroyed. The runway cratered in 70 locations. Fuel reserves nearly depleted. Henderson Field is inoperative. The Marines expect construction to take days, maybe weeks. The Seabees have the first runway section operational by 10 a.m., 6 hours after the bombardment ends. American fighters take off to intercept Japanese bombers coming to finish the job. Commander Blunden leads the repair efforts personally. He's operating a bulldozer, pushing destroyed aircraft off the runway, filling craters with coral. His men work in shifts, some filling holes, others manning defensive positions in case Japanese ground forces attack during the chaos. Admiral William Bull Halsey arrives on Guadalcanal 2 weeks later. He's taking command of South Pacific operations. He tours Henderson Field, sees the cratered runway, the makeshift repairs, the exhausted Seabees working around the clock. "How the hell are you keeping this field operational?" Halsey asks Blunden. "We fill holes faster than they can make them, sir," Blunden replies. Halsey sees Seabees working on the runway, with rifles stacked within arm's reach. He sees defensive foxholes dug around bulldozers. He sees the integration of construction and combat that wasn't supposed to work. "The brass back home said this concept was impractical," Halsey says. "The brass back home isn't filling bomb craters under mortar fire, sir." Halsey sends a classified report to Admiral King. The message is clear. The Seabee concept isn't just working, It's essential. Traditional military structure separates combat and construction. Seabees prove you need both skill sets in the same unit. When enemy forces attack, there's no time to call for combat troops. When airfields get cratered, there's no time to wait for rear echelon engineers. But resistance continues in Washington. The Bureau of Navigation still objects to Civil Engineer Corps officers commanding armed combat units. Army Corps of Engineers argue the Seabees are duplicating their mission. Budget analysts complain about the cost of training dual-role construction combat battalions. December 1942, Blunden and the 6th NCB are finally relieved after 4 months on Guadalcanal. They've suffered casualties. They're exhausted. They've kept Henderson Field operational through constant bombardment. They've built roads, bridges, fuel storage facilities, ammunition dumps, hospitals, and defensive positions, all while defending the perimeter alongside Marines. Blunden returns to Washington for debriefing. He enters a conference room filled with staff officers, budget planners, and military traditionalists who still question the Seabee concept. A Navy captain opens the questioning. "Commander Blunden, your men are construction workers. Yet reports indicate they engaged in direct combat multiple times. This seems to indicate inadequate Marine protection of work sites." Blunden stares at him. "Sir, the Japanese don't distinguish between Marines and Seabees. When they attack the perimeter, everyone fights. My men understand this. They built positions during the day. They defended them at night. That's the job." A Bureau of Navigation officer interjects, "But this blurs the lines between combat and support roles. How do you maintain construction productivity when men are trained for combat?" "We maintained it by staying alive, sir," Blunden replies. "A dead construction worker builds nothing. An armed construction worker builds airfields that win wars." If you're enjoying this story of the unsung heroes who built and fought across the Pacific, please hit that like button and subscribe. We're diving deep into forgotten battles that changed history, and your support helps us tell these stories. All right, back to Guadalcanal. The room erupts in argument. Some officers insist the Seabee experiment succeeded only because of exceptional circumstances on Guadalcanal. Others argue Henderson Field's survival proves the concept should expand immediately. Admiral King silences the room. "Gentlemen, I don't care about your theories. I care about results. Henderson Field stayed operational. The Seabees did that. We're island hopping across the Pacific. Every island needs airfields built under fire. Are you telling me we should send unarmed construction workers?" Silence. "Then we're expanding the Seabees. I want 20 more battalions recruited immediately." The Seabees are now official doctrine. What started as an impractical experiment becomes the foundation of Pacific Campaign logistics. The numbers tell the story. By December 1942, just 10 months after the Seabees' creation, Henderson Field has been attacked by Japanese naval bombardment 14 times, bombed by air 72 times, and subjected to ground assault 6 times. The field has been rendered inoperative for a total of 16 hours across 4 months, 16 hours across constant bombardment. Marine air operations from Henderson Field sink or damage over 200 Japanese ships and down hundreds of aircraft. Those operations happen only because the Seabees keep rebuilding the runway faster than Japan can destroy it. Commander Joseph Blunden's innovation becomes standard procedure. Pre-positioned repair supplies at runway's edge. Bulldozers staged for immediate crater filling. Teams rotating between construction and defensive positions. It's a hybrid warfare model that shouldn't work according to military textbooks. It works because it has to. February 1943. Guadalcanal is secured. The 6th NCB has completed their mission. They've lengthened Henderson Field from 2,600 feet to 5,000 feet. Built taxiways, parking aprons, fuel storage for 10,000 barrels, constructed piers capable of docking cargo ships, erected a 200-bed hospital, built roads through 30 miles of jungle, installed electrical systems, water purification, ammunition magazines, all while losing 18 men killed in action or dead from accidents under fire. But Guadalcanal is just the beginning. The Seabee concept proven, the Navy expands rapidly. By mid-1943, 45 construction battalions are operational across the Pacific. By 1944, over 100 battalions. Each learns the same deadly arithmetic. Build fast, fight when necessary, don't stop. November 1943, Tarawa Atoll. The 18th Naval Construction Battalion lands on Batio Island behind the Marines in what becomes one of the bloodiest assaults of the Pacific War. The battle is won in 76 hours. The airfield must be operational in 77 hours before Japanese counterattacks arrive. The Seabees hit the beach while Japanese snipers still fire from destroyed bunkers. They don't wait for the island to be secured. They start building while Marines are still clearing enemy positions. Casualties are immediate. Seabee Maurice Mace, a bulldozer operator from Iowa, is shot by a sniper while clearing debris from the runway. He's 39 years old. He keeps operating the bulldozer until blood loss makes him unconscious. Other Seabees pull him to cover. He dies en route to the aid station. The Seabees complete Tarawa's airfield in 48 hours. American bombers operating from Tarawa begin striking Japanese positions in the Marshall Islands within 3 days. The strategic advantage is immediate. This pattern repeats across the Pacific. Kwajalein, Eniwetok, Saipan, Tinian, Guam, Peleliu. Every invasion follows the same sequence. Marines secure the beachhead. Seabees land within hours. Airfields operational within days. American air power dominates before the Japanese can reinforce. The Japanese begin targeting Seabees specifically. Intelligence intercepts reveal Japanese commanders identifying construction equipment as priority targets. Destroy the bulldozers, crater the runways, kill the builders. That's the strategy to slow American island hopping. It fails because the Seabees keep adapting. Iwo Jima, February 19, 1945. The 31st Naval Construction Battalion lands on D-Day. The island is still under heavy fire. Seabees immediately begin repairing the damaged airfield near Mount Suribachi. Japanese artillery on the mountain slopes rain shells directly onto the worksite. Seabee Robert Sorensen is operating a bulldozer when an artillery shell explodes 10 feet away. Shrapnel tears through the cab. Sorensen is wounded but continues operating the bulldozer, bleeding into the seat, pushing volcanic sand to fill a crater. Another shell explodes. Sorensen is killed at his controls. 2 other. Seabees immediately jump onto the bulldozer and continue the work. The airfield at Iwo Jima becomes operational on D-Day +3, 3 days after landing. The first B-29 Superfortress makes an emergency landing on March 4th, just 13 days into the battle. The crew chief jumps out and sees Seabees working on runway expansion while mortar rounds impact 200 yards away. "You guys are insane," the crew chief says. A Seabee responds, "You guys bomb Japan from 30,000 feet. We build runways under artillery fire. Different kinds of insane." By war's end, over 2,400 B-29s will make emergency landings at Iwo Jima. Each crew owes their survival to Seabees who built under fire. That's 27,000 American airmen, 11 men per bomber, who live because construction workers kept working while being shelled. The testimony of Sergeant Raymond Jacobs, waist gunner on a B-29 named Lucky Lady, captures what those airmen felt. "We were shot up bad over Tokyo, 2 engines out, fuel tanks punctured. We couldn't make it back to the Marianas. Our pilot saw Iwo Jima and knew we had one chance. We came in on fumes. The runway was perfect. We touched down and rolled to a stop. Seabees were working on the far end of the field. They waved at us like it was just another day. Those construction workers saved our lives. Multiply that story by 2,400 emergency landings. Okinawa, April 1945, the last major battle of the Pacific War. Nearly 55,000 Seabees participate, the largest concentration of construction forces ever deployed. They build or repair 8 airfields under constant kamikaze attacks and artillery bombardment. They construct roads, bridges, ammunition storage, fuel depots, and hospital facilities for 500,000 American troops. They do it while Japanese forces fight a suicidal defensive campaign. Kamikazes target supply ships. Artillery pounds construction sites. The Seabees suffer heavy casualties but never stop building. By August 1945, sufficient facilities and air power are concentrated on Okinawa to launch the planned invasion of mainland Japan. The invasion never happens. Atomic bombs end the war. But the Seabees had built the infrastructure to support 2 million invasion troops. Before we get to the aftermath, I want to remind you to hit that subscribe button. We're covering the unsung heroes of WWII, the stories that don't make it into most history books. Your support means we can keep researching and producing these deep dive documentaries. Now let's talk about what happened after the war. The final accounting. 258,172 men served in the Seabees during World War II. They built over 400 advanced bases across 2 theaters, constructed or repaired 111 major airfields, built housing for 1.5 million servicemen, laid thousands of miles of roads through jungle, desert, and volcanic terrain, erected 700 square miles of warehouses and storage facilities, installed over 3,000 miles of water and fuel pipelines, and they did all of it within rifle range of the enemy. Joseph Paul Blunden returns to civilian life in 1945. He never writes a memoir, never seeks recognition. When reporters ask about Guadalcanal, he deflects credit to his men. "I just pointed at dirt and told them to move it," he says. "They're the ones who moved it while people shot at them." Blunden dies in 1970. His obituary mentions his construction company in West Virginia. 3 paragraphs at the end mention his Navy service. Most people in his hometown never knew he commanded the first Seabees in combat. That humility defines the Seabee legacy. They built the infrastructure that won the Pacific War, yet their story remains largely unknown outside military history circles. The dramatic combat narratives focus on Marines storming beaches, pilots dogfighting Zeros, submarines stalking convoys. The construction workers building runways under artillery fire don't fit Hollywood's war narrative. But Admiral Chester Nimitz understood their value. In a letter written after the war, Nimitz stated, "The Seabees' contribution to victory in the Pacific cannot be measured in traditional combat metrics. They created the airfields that gave us air superiority. They built the bases that sustained our fleet. They constructed the hospitals that saved thousands of lives. Without the Seabees, the island-hopping campaign fails. Without the island-hopping campaign, the war extends for years and costs hundreds of thousands more lives." The veterans remember? Marine Gunnery Sergeant Frank Reynolds, who fought on Guadalcanal, wrote in 1987, "We get the glory. The Seabees get forgotten." But I'll tell you something. Henderson Field saved the Marine Corps on Guadalcanal, and the Seabees saved Henderson Field. Every Marine who survived that island owes their life to construction workers who refused to quit building under the worst conditions imaginable. The Seabees' most important legacy isn't what they built. It's what they proved. The false choice between combat and support roles. Military orthodoxy insisted soldiers fight or build. The Seabees demonstrated that modern warfare requires forces that can do both simultaneously. They created a model copied by military engineers worldwide. Today, the Navy Seabees continue operating in conflict zones. They built forward operating bases in Iraq and Afghanistan. They conduct humanitarian construction after natural disasters. They maintain the tradition, we build, we fight. Only 11 Seabee battalions remain active in the modern Navy, down from 151 in World War II. But their combat construction doctrine remains unchanged. Seabees deploy armed. They train for defensive operations. They build under threat conditions. The lesson of Guadalcanal endures. Real warfare is messy. Enemy forces don't wait for construction to finish before attacking. Supply lines get interdicted. Equipment breaks. Plans fail. Success requires adaptability. The ability to switch from operating a bulldozer to manning a defensive position without hesitation. The Seabees embodied that adaptability. Bucky Meyer drove trucks and shot down aircraft. Joseph Blunden commanded construction and defended perimeters. Thousands of men held the line while building the infrastructure that won the war. The Japanese thought they were soft targets, construction workers, non-combatants, easy to kill, easier to scare away. They were wrong. The Seabees built. They fought. They won. And they never stopped working.